We talk a lot about the dark parts of the Clone Wars on this channel, about the aspects of the conflict that made life a living hell for most clones. Not all assignments clones received were created equally, however. Some were much worse than others. There were some planets in the galaxy, however, that weren't half bad for a clone to be stationed on, where clones could relax as much as it was possible to relax during a galactic scale war. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the top 5 such worlds.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
First things first, we should note that this list is extremely subjective. By and large, we don't know of the garrisons that had it easy because, well, that doesn't make for a good story. We can guess at what positions would have fallen into that category by picking out the worlds that were far from the front lines and comparing them to their respective environments and such. However, due to the dilemma imposed by the CIS's stateless strategy and the constant shortage of clones, it can be hard to tell which worlds would have actually been garrisoned and which would have been passed off as safe, but we're going to try our best. First up, we have Alderaan. This is a bit of an obvious choice, as Alderaan was an idyllic world, after all, one of the most pleasant in the galaxy. But there are factors that put it at the bottom of this list, which we'll get to later. During the Clone Wars, Alderaan was usually far from the front lines and it was one of the few truly peaceful worlds left in the galaxy. But there were clones here. Alderaan was the headquarters of the 4th Sector Army, which meant there was at least a small garrison assigned to the protection of this renowned paradise. Alderaan was a world of tremendous natural beauty, which its largely human inhabitants went to great lengths to preserve and enshrine. Many Alderaanians were pacifists, and indeed, during the Clone Wars, every last weapon on the planet was rounded up and shot off into space as a formal gesture. The planet was well off enough to keep crime and similar issues to a minimum, and even soldiers fighting in the largest war in galactic history could find peace and entertainment there. With that said, there are mitigating factors at play here. Alderaan was attacked once during the Clone Wars, at the end of Operation Dirge's Lance, and in that conflict, General Grievous is said to have nearly destroyed the planet in retaliation for its acceptance of refugees from separatist worlds like Ando. The Republic beat Grievous back from Alderaan, but that battle would not have been pleasant for any clone stationed there, which is why Alderaan is ranked at the bottom of our list. Nonetheless, it was an exceptionally beautiful planet, and it would have been otherwise enjoyable enough for clones for us to consider it despite the battle. On the surface, Toydaria doesn't really sound like an ideal candidate for this list. It was a foul-smelling swamp world, inhabited by a number of dangerous predators and a species of flying anti-Semitic caricatures. The planet was located in Hutt space, and indeed, the Toydarians as a species were Hutt vassals. The Hutts, nonetheless, allowed them to govern themselves, albeit under the jurisdiction of Nal Hutta, which wanted a piece of any profits the Toydarians made. But Toydaria did have a Republic base, and its location in Hutt space granted the clones stationed there something they would be hard-pressed to find anywhere else: security. One of the most important rules of the Star Wars galaxy is that you never, ever, ever mess with the Hutts. This is why the Republic having a base on Toydaria was so strategically important. The Confederacy would never dare mess with it. Toydaria was indeed never attacked during the Clone Wars, though Dooku's Dark Acolytes repeatedly attempted to interfere in its affairs, and it never had to fear an attack either. The clones stationed there could rest assured that they were safe, something that no other garrison in the galaxy could say. There were definitely drawbacks to being stationed on Toydaria as well, of course, but clone helmet filters were probably capable of blocking out the worst of all the smells, and that's most of the drawbacks right there. All told, Toydaria was a good place to be stationed. At spot number 3, we have Argao, a planet you may or may not have heard of. Argao, which was located fairly close to Coruscant in the Clone Wars, was one of the most important banking worlds in the galaxy. The Bank of Argao was a powerful member of the intergalactic banking clan, and while the IGBC was largely aligned with the Confederacy, the Argyle branch insisted on remaining neutral. Unlike the similarly aligned Scipio branch, the Bank of Argyle actually kept its word on that one, and as a result, it was never attacked by the Confederacy. However, due to rumors of Argyle selling weapons to the Confederacy, there were clones stationed on the planet. The presence of clones actually caused a ton of controversy on Argyle, as it violated one of the 3 statutes, the guiding laws of the planet. The second of those statutes stated that it was illegal, on penalty of death, for outsiders to carry weapons on Argyle. Conversely, it was illegal for citizens to be unarmed. The armed clone units violated this rule, which caused quite a stir, but ultimately didn't result in any trouble for the clones. Argyle was a fairly safe world for the clones, as the planet's dangers mostly consisted of getting involved in the wrong financial scheme. Since clones generally didn't have bank accounts or really any credits, they didn't have to worry much about any of that, and so Argyle was both safe and pleasant to be on due to the economic prosperity of the world. Speaking of safe and pleasant worlds, we have Ethor, home of the pacifistic, nature-loving Ethorians. The Ethorians largely followed what they called the law of life, which decreed that, for every life they happened to destroy, they must create 2 more to replace it. Generally, this law related to plants, in that Ethorians would plant 2 plants for every one they harvested. As a result of this law, the Ethorians carefully preserved their planet, living above it in giant floating cities called herd ships. The massive jungles of Ethor were practically untouched by sentients, as only a few Ethorians ever made the pilgrimage down to what they called Mother Jungle. It is unknown if there ever was a clone garrison on Ethor, but if there was, it would have had an easy job. Ethor was never attacked, as the Ethorians were almost universally respected, and an assault on their beloved homeworld would have been indefensible, even for the likes of General Grievous. Furthermore, the Ethorians themselves would not have given the clones any trouble. They fully supported the Republic, and in any case, they respected all life, including the lives of their enemies. This, plus the natural beauty of Ethor itself, would have made the world an idyllic spot for a clone to be garrisoned on. One of the core founders of the Republic, Kamars was the home of the Kamasi, a scholarly bird-like species that, like the Ethorians, were universally respected. They too were known for their pacifism, and it's even said that they were the ones who taught the early Jedi morality. They were ardent supporters of the Republic they helped create, and though they opposed the Military Creation Act and the Clone Wars in general, they did continue to support the Republic during the conflict. They likely had a clone garrison due to their planet's importance, but unlike the clone garrison on neighbouring Alderaan, this one never actually came under attack, and they never really had to fear attack either, as the Confederacy never came close to attacking Kamars and probably wouldn't have dared either. Like Ethor and Alderaan, Kamars was a paradise world, a lush planet teeming with life. Also, like the population of these worlds, the Kamasi went to great lengths to preserve this environment, but they were much more tolerant of outsiders than Ethor and weren't in as much danger as Alderaan was. The Kamasi disliked the Clone Wars and believed the Republic brought it upon itself, but they nonetheless helped by assisting refugees, and they would have tolerated and been respectful toward any clone station on the planet regardless. All told, there likely wasn't a better place for a clone to be stationed on than Kamars. Unfortunately, the clones didn't repay the Kamasi all that well for their graciousness. In 19 BBY, just a few months after the end of the Clone Wars, they destroyed the whole surface of the planet over Kamasi distaste for the Empire. So those were our top 5 best worlds for a clone to be stationed on, but what do you think? Did we miss any good ones? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments section below. And as usual guys, just before we go, if you want to play as a clone trooper yourself, make sure you join our Geetsly's gaming network. And if you just want to chat to other Star Wars fans, our main Geetsly's Discord is for you. That link is also in the description below. But anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.